My name is Sharon Pate. I'm coming to you from the Hilo Church of God, part of my spiritual family for many years. My message today deals with John's apocalypse and all the symbols in that particular narrative. Some years ago, I discovered a celestial clock that's located within its pages. And today I wanted to describe how that clock operates in the event we have Christians in the areas of its occurring, and that they may seek refuge before the events occur. So you can actually look up into the heavenlies and see what time it is in John's apocalypse. You can't tell the day or the hour of events, but if you follow the celestial clock, you can find the season of their occurrence. So many years ago, around 2012 or 2014, I had studied prophecy for many years and read as many books as I could about it. And I found in one that there was an ancient constellation that lay beneath Aries, and it's this constellation that was devised by the Akkadians that was an altar. Now, once I realized there was an altar beneath Aries, and that the original depictions of Aries were not as a standing lamb, but as a prone lamb, as if laying on the altar. Now, while the Akkadians lived many thousands of years ago, their constellations may not have been so remote to John, especially when he was there isolated on the island of Patmos. So when John looked up at the sky, he could see the altar of the Lamb. Now, I got very excited when I first saw this, but this is the eternal clock. There's another element that goes along with this clock, and that was the 7 wandering stars. Now, this was the portion of the clock that no matter how many books I read, I could never figure out. Although it's common knowledge among the Persians, among the Arabians, and among ancient Hebrew literature, for whatever reason, our Christian fathers didn't disclose this particular symbolism. So I discovered that inside this clock are 7 wandering stars, and these stars rotate all the time and come to the altar of the Lamb. Then I was excited. I thought, oh, I found the clock. And then I realized, but it's been running since eternity started, and it'll run forever and ever. So then I couldn't find the ribbon of time in which the clock started measuring John's apocalypse, until a Catholic priest presented a symbol that was going to occur in 2017 on Yom Kippur, and that was Betula and her crown of 12 stars. Beneath her feet was the moon, which is a symbol of the Jewish people. So when I realized that this occurred, I knew then the ribbon of time. And even before she rose in the sky, I paged through the orbits of the 7 wandering stars to discover when that would start. Now, there are 2 stars, 2 very large stars. One is Saturn, who has an orbit of 29 years, and the other is Jupiter, which has an orbit of 12 years. I knew that this would occur when these two were closest together, because Jesus said, "Except that time be shortened, not even the elect would be saved." So I found three periods of time in the next 100 years where that would occur. Although I thought it was most likely to occur in the first one, because our memories are so short. I didn't think that God would expect us to remember many years hence from the present time. So that time started in around May and June of 2023, and it ended around March of 2024. That was when Jupiter, the royal star, would be present at the altar of the Lamb. Now, during this time, I expected the war to start. The war to start between the enemies of Israel. And I waited when it came in May and June and then July, and then I realized maybe this isn't going to happen. And I started searching all the newscasts to see if Israel was having trouble. And there was no saber rattling. It was all quiet, all disturbingly quiet. And then when October 7th, even though I had been looking for it, even though I had anticipated it, even long before Yom Kippur in 2017, I was still stunned. I was stunned by the audacity and the violence of what was occurring. So that verified to me that the wandering stars were actually monitoring the apocalypse that John recorded. Now we have, after October 7th, I started watching to see the stars as they were passing by the altar of the Lamb. And there was a star that marked the land attacks, the sea attacks, and the fountain of water attacks, and the sun's appearance. So I studied these. They were a little different than I had anticipated, because originally, when I studied the wandering stars, it was the moon. It was the moon that was the first star, and Saturn, the crawler, was always the last star. Now, ancient peoples used to always depict the sun as being the middle star, with 3 attendants of the smaller stars on each side. And true to their records, the sun did appear as the middle star. So for the next combat scenarios, since that time, these wandering stars have marked the operations of the Hebrews in their conflict. And if you look really closely, while John and Daniel record prophecies in sequential order, there are other prophecies that relate to this time, and you can plug them in using those 2 prophets as the foundation. Now, one of these is Obadiah, and in the record of Obadiah, you can see the Israeli entrance into Lebanon, even according to the cities and the line of demarcation where they stop. So these records are coming to pass. This time when John's apocalypse is standing up from its pages is happening right now. So we have passed through the wandering stars, the first 4 wandering stars, and they've blown their trumpets, and they have all the catastrophes during that time have elapsed. But these stars don't stop. It says that the stars continue to rotate in their orbits, and then they pass from the altar of the Lamb into the areas where the cherubim are located. And one of the cherubim is Taurus. The very next cherubim is Taurus. And it is this cherubim that I thought held the vials of wrath. So all of these are interwoven. I tried to maintain some records of how their orbits are occurring, although we don't exactly know which orbit among the stars is the one that's going to record the event. We do see when they come, and we can know the season and anticipate that it may happen then. So when October 7th, 2023 occurred, I was so surprised that it wasn't the moon, the first trumpet that was present at the altar. It was Jupiter, the royal star. So I immediately opened up the passages in the scripture, and it was then that I realized that the war in the apocalypse did not start with the first trumpet. It started with the fire angel, and I want to read its passage. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended before God out of the angel's hand, and the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar, and cast it into the earth. And there were voices, and thunderings, and lightnings, and an earthquake. And the 7 angels, which had the 7 trumpets, prepared themselves to sound. Revelations 8, 3-6. That was when I realized that it was the fire angel that started the conflict. So, looking upon him, looking upon the royal star at the altar, I realized there was something much more to the symbolism of this account. For it says later, well, it says earlier actually in the passage, I am the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, and what thou seest write in a book, and send it unto the 7 churches. I realized we were witnessing Alpha, who had opened the scroll to the apocalypse. So Alpha was present as the royal star. It wasn't until then that I found a passage, a description of this particular star from a researcher at Tel Aviv. His name escapes me now, but he could read all the ancient languages, and this particular star wasn't just any royal star. It was Zadok, the righteous, in Canaanite. And then I thought it was so peculiar that our God was speaking to his peoples in the Canaanite language, both in Gaza and the Hebrews and all the Mideast round about. Even the Canaanites recognized his authority and his righteousness way back in the eons of time. So he will reappear. I recognized then that if he appears once as Alpha, he's going to have to appear at the end of this age as Omega. And that puts brackets around John's apocalypse. So after he appears, and it took me a long time to realize this, I'm such a novice, that the moon arrives at the altar of the Lamb every month. Every month, the moon, the symbol of the Jewish people, arrives at the altar of the Lamb. And so I looked later, although I had recorded an example in my narrative, which was a soldier's guide to the apocalypse, I realized that the moon came monthly. The first trumpet came monthly. And so after October, there could be also another depiction of the moon's arrival. It could have been November. It could have been December, although the picture that I picked was January. Now, when the moon arrives, the moon with its large girth obscures the royal star. And then when the moon leaves, the royal star reappears as the second trumpet. There are only 7 stars, and yet these stars are representing 8 angelic beings, 8 messengers from God. And so when the moon came, that's when there were judgments on the Lamb, and then we had judgments on the sea, and then we had judgments on the fountains of waters, and then we had judgments in the heavenlies. Now this is the kind of the reverse of creation. God is purifying his creation with these judgments. And the fountains of waters are very important because the fountains of waters represents the knowledge of the Lord. And when they are purified, his knowledge will come out in truth where we can recognize it. So here we have the conflict. We have the conflict between the Hebrews and the Palestinians and Hezbollah. And all of it is in the record. Now, after some of these stars pass by the altar of the Lamb annually. I'm not sure if these reoccur each time they pass by, or if they only record it once. But they're continuing to pass by, and they will continue for the next decade during this ribbon of time. Now, after they pass here, they pass into where the cherubim are located, and the very first cherubim is Taurus. Now, Taurus was present at the spring equinox, which was a big symbol for the people of that age when Moses received the law. And as we know, the Hebrews got confused. They cast a lamb, a golden calf, while he was receiving the law. And they were following the cultural beliefs of the people round about. But something else was occurring here. This was on the cusp between Taurus and the Lamb as they arrive at the spring equinox. And while many peoples used these zodiac symbols to represent their era, to represent the passage of time, albeit it is a very slow passage of time, because it takes a full 26,000 years for these fixed zodiac symbols to rotate, it still represents a passage of time in the civilizations at that era. And it was something that they believed in and characterized in a lot of their writings and cultural events, and in some cases religious worship. Now Moses looked forward to the Lamb period of time, and hence they had the Paschal Lamb as a ritual, and they marked their doorways with the blood of the Lamb. He was looking forward. He was looking forward to the Messiah. He was looking forward to the Lamb of God coming. And truly, when the Lamb arrived at the very conclusion of the Lamb age, Jesus came during his first visitation. But unfortunately, the leaders of the people at that time missed their time of visitation, and it was closing. The Lamb age was closing, and the age of the fish, the two fish, two symbolizing testimony, tethered together, the age of the fish was coming. Jesus looked forward to this age, the age of grace. And his disciples became fishers of men. And the symbol of the early church, the secret symbol where they designated they were going to convene during their oppression times, that secret symbol was a fish. So here we learn that the symbols in the fixed constellations of the sky depict eras. And one of the things that characterizes these eras, as one era changes to another, it's characterized by confusion among the peoples. Just as the Jewish people became confused with the golden calf, just as their leadership became confused at the closure of the Lamb age into the fish age, so likewise we are also on the cusp. We are on the cusp between the closure of the age of grace, depicted by the fish, and the coming kingdom age, depicted by Aquarius, who's pouring the waters of the heavenlies, of the knowledge of God, onto the whole earth. It's an age of confusion, but it's also the age, the interval of time in which John's apocalypse stands up and Daniel's calendar of events stands. Now these two narratives, these two passages in the scriptures are one of the few prophetic utterances that are actually in chronological order. Perhaps not all of John is in chronological order, but there are large sequences that are in chronological order. So I have taken these and tried to superimpose other unfulfilled prophecies that seem to depict this period of time so we can see what's going to happen next. And inside these consolidated passages, I created a little book called A Soldier's Guide to the Prophetic Battlefields and Revelations. The purpose of this is to find your position in time so you know where to stand. You know where to stand to escape catastrophic events. You know when to prepare your soul to receive your Lord. You know where sanctuary is and refuge is, and all the divine things that God has so disclosed to Arabic peoples, to Persian peoples, to Hebrew peoples. And how do I know this? Because these peoples had the key recorded into understanding the clock in the book of Revelations. It wasn't necessarily Christendom. Although we've had the prophecy for the past 2,000 years, I've never heard a teaching on this, or even a teaching on the 7 wandering stars, which would have opened up its pages.